Elizabeth Rolfe is our next speaker, followed by David Garth, and John Rolfe is our final speaker this afternoon.
My name is Elizabeth Rolfe. I'm co-chair of the Ag Tourism Coalition, and I live in the Adelaide, an area increasingly impacted in both good ways and bad ways by tourism. While many issues of importance come to the fore when we review the events proposal, today I would like to comment on one that is of great importance to the future of this county. That is the question of what new uses we will allow in ag areas. What many speakers are talking about are a few weddings here and there, and how nice weddings are. That, unfortunately, is not, this ordinance, unfortunately, is not only about weddings. It's about events in general. They are proposing to open our ag lands across the board to larger commercial activities. Rock concerts, fairs, auto shows, and circuses would also be included under a broader definition of special events. And then there will be demands for restaurants, stores, and gas stations to service the visitors that come. What we are really talking about is rezoning our ag lands commercial. And if this is what we want, then that is the conversation we should be having. Do we want to abandon our zoning protections that work for the majority, to enhance the bottom line for some during these difficult times? Is that what this county really wants? If this topic goes back to the board, we should be discussing rezoning, not allowed uses. I might add that my reading of the authorizing directives from the former Board of Supervisors with respect to ag tourism indicates quite the opposite original intent. Consistent with the board's stated expectations, I would like to urge your commission to honor our current zoning provisions and ag policies, particularly Ag Policy 6. That means in our agricultural areas, there is first commercial agriculture, then there may be a limited array of accessory uses like events. These accessory uses must be secondary and incidental, and I take that to mean related to the primary agriculture. There are a number of reasons why this direction is good policy. It directs more dollars to active farmers and ranchers. It protects neighbors and neighborhoods. It preserves rural character, that ambience that attracts tourists in the first place, and ultimately, it enhances our property values. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rolfe. David Garth is our next speaker, followed by John Rolfe.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission. I am David Garth, President and CEO of the San Luis Obispo Chamber of Commerce. I think I'm concerned there are several misconceptions and assumptions that have led to this point. It appears, first of all, that there's some assumption that there are widespread problems with the events that are happening now, and we don't believe that to be true. There are always going to be a few people who don't follow the rules and don't act responsibly. Those people should be taken care of by enforcement, but not by throwing the baby out with the bathwater and writing an ordinance that, in fact, doesn't further the intent of the Board of Supervisors, and it does hurt events that are not causing any problems in the rural areas. I think there's also an assumption that the Ag Tourism Coalition is, in fact, an Ag Tourism Coalition, some sort of broad-based group that represents a diverse point of view. Our research indicates that's not the case. It's a small group of people, mostly headquartered in the Templeton area, who are opposed to events. I think there's also some assumption, if you read the ordinance, that somehow commercial events are somehow more destructive than nonprofit events, and that somehow commercial activity and making a buck is something that's bad. That's probably the most disturbing assumption, I believe. This country has been built on small businesses developing jobs and improving the quality of life for many, many, many people. And to somehow assume that an event that where the farmer or rancher gets paid, or that somehow a commercial event is more destructive to the land or more harmful to the neighbors, or the noise is louder, is completely ridiculous. And as there has been testimony, most of the biggest events, in fact, are nonprofit events. The same thing applies to somehow exempting historic properties. Those properties probably ought to be preserved the most, and somehow exempting them. It's obvious that both of those exemptions are because politically it would never fly if the nonprofits and the historical lands were not exempt. They all should be treated equally. This ordinance is dangerous. It will hurt small business. Our members of our chamber, as opposed to the Ag Tourism Coalition, we have 1,500 members. They're mostly small businesses. They're located all throughout the county. They're evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans. We, in fact, do represent a coalition of small business people, and they are virtually unanimously opposed to this ordinance. It needs to be sent back to the Board of Supervisors. It's fundamentally flawed, and it needs to get back to the intent of the supervisors, the original intent of the supervisors, which was a legitimate concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garth. John Rolfe is the last speaker slip I have. I did get a note from Sue Luff, who said she did turn a speaker slip in prior to the 10:35 cutoff point. I'm going to defer to that, even though I can't find a speaker slip, but maybe it'll show up in the pile. Welcome, Mr. Rolfe.
Thank you. My name is John Rolfe. We farm wine grapes, and as a farmer and a landowner living in the west side of Paso Robles, I'm very concerned about how the county regulates its ag zone lands. With respect to ag tourism generally and the prospective events ordinance in particular, there are several principles that I urge you to follow in your decision making. First, I urge you to take a conservative approach in expanding non-ag uses of agricultural land. There can and will be unforeseen consequences to new non-ag uses. If you decide to expand non-ag uses of ag land, doing it one step at a time will allow you to detect and correct problems, and before hopefully they become, or unhopefully they become, disasters. Secondly, I urge you to carefully weigh the neighborhood burdens of non-ag uses. As a local farmer, I'm particularly concerned about the potentially harmful impacts of non-ag uses such as weddings, conference centers, motocross rallies, rock concerts, and the like. Potentially harmful neighborhood impacts include trespassing, crash on the roads, drunk driving, and excessive noise. Third, as a general principle, poor land use planning can be quite detrimental to property values. For example, almost 2 decades ago, Napa Valley realized how valuable its land was for growing grapes and effectively banned new non-ag uses such as events on non-ag land, or on ag land rather. While Paso Robles wine prices are not yet anyway at the Napa Valley level, their experience is relevant to us. On a different note, could I ask, and I guess I'm the last speaker, so perhaps I shouldn't even ask, but let me just note it, one of the CABO speakers to give us a little more information on their survey. I'd be interested in what population they surveyed. The wall chart says there were 157 responses, so I'd like to know how many surveys were sent out, what was the response rate, knowing who was surveyed, what the non-response rate is key to assessing the relevance of the survey to the issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rolfe.